Plant Vogtle is the only nuclear power plant under construction in the United States and has been under construction since 2009. Despite it going over budget by $18 billion and being 7 years late, the Georgia Public Service Commission has never closely reviewed the cost overruns and expenses related to this plant, saying they would do so at the end of the project. That review is very important because whatever expenses are deemed reasonable and prudent, Georgia Power customers must pay. Expenses that are deemed not reasonable or not prudent must be absorbed by Georgia Power. Now here we are at the end of the project with Unit 3 online in August and Unit 4 expected to enter commercial operation in 2024, and the Commission has declined to review those expenses. They held a rocket docket of just 11 hours on December 4th and 5th. I testified for about 20 minutes on behalf of an organization called Concerned Ratepayers of Georgia, with my concerns and comments on what the Commission needed to do to repair these oversights and failures to protect Georgia Power customers. I end with 7 recommendations for the Commission, and you will hear that when you see it, that the Commissioners had no questions, neither did Georgia Power attorneys, neither in fact did the PSC Staff attorney for the Commission, Preston Thomas, have any comments or questions for me in my testimony. He did, however, have a lot to say about me and my testimony the following week when I was not there to defend myself. And the principal for Concerned Ratepayers of Georgia, when he tried to protest those comments about me, was thrown out of the hearing by the state police. I'm going to play all that for you now.
Commission, I'd like to ask Ms. Durand to read her summary. Go ahead, Ms. Durand.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
The stipulated agreement before you is unseemly, inappropriate, and harmful for the people of Georgia and should be rejected. For 14 years, this Commission has declined to review or disallow Vogtle's cost overruns, repeatedly stating that you would determine what was reasonable and prudent when the project was completed. This claim was most recently made on July 27th during VCM 28 when Commissioner McDonald said it, and that this Commission would review all expenses now. And here we are, literally deciding the largest rate case in Georgia history with a rocket docket of mere hours and no real prudency review. Note that the Georgia Public Service Commission, as with all state commissions, is structured to be a neutral party in an adversarial two-party system, much like a court of law. While stipulated agreements may not be illegal, they should be, especially the secretive way that Georgia Power conducts them. Stipulated agreements should involve all interested parties, otherwise it's a backroom deal. And this case was even worse. Not only were intervenors hand-selected by Georgia Power, but for the first time ever, this stipulated agreement was reached prior to any hearings or any testimony from intervenors or members of the public. This is a gross distortion of the public process. Yesterday, Mr. Abramovitz claimed that anybody could attend the hearing, but I guess we would have needed a Jedi mind meld to know when they were. And I had lunch with Liz Coyle, one of the signers of the stipulated agreement, on August 2nd. The stipulated agreement was published August 30th. Those discussions were happening then, and Liz Coyle and I discussed Plant Vogtle and this rate increase at length, yet she never mentioned the stipulated agreement discussions that she was in because she knew they were secretive too. So Mr. Abramovitz was either joking or gaslighting by his statements yesterday. Every utility's goal is to increase their rate base, which I've heard very little of today and yesterday. In fact, all the public speakers speaking in support of nuclear generally never mentioned the rate base. I guess they didn't know about it. But the rate base is the total value of a utility's assets. The larger the rate base, the more profits they earn. That is literally their single goal. If this Commission approves the stipulated agreement, Georgia Power's rate base will expand an astonishing 47%, an enormous increase in their profitability of nearly $1 billion a year, forever. And yet Georgia Power's generation expands only 7.5%. Only a distorted regulatory relationship favoring a monopoly utility over ratepayer interests would allow such a disparate amount of rate base increase for a tiny bit of generation. $7.562 billion is the largest rate increase in Georgia history, in fact, in U.S. history for any state commission. And that enormous price tag does not include $3.5 billion in financing, on which Georgia Power also makes a profit. Adding those together, we reach $11.1 billion going to Georgia's rate base. For that, we get 1,000 megawatts of energy. That equals $10,784 per kilowatt of installed capacity. That's insanity. The document that I know the commission has because Sally Tanner said you had it, and I know Georgia Power has it because she said you had it, so we can play games about whether this document should be entered into the record, shows what EIA says installed capacity costs for wind, solar, and gas. Solar is only $1,500 per kilowatt of installed capacity. Wind is only $1,400 per kilowatt of installed capacity, and gas is $920 per kilowatt of installed capacity. Are you guys going to allow this to be entered into the record?
I've already ruled on that.
All right. Meanwhile, Vogtle is $10,000 per $784 per kilowatt of installed capacity. My hat is off to Georgia Power. Good job, gentlemen and lady, for your ability to convince well-meaning people into signing an agreement that Georgia Power customers should pay 10 times the installed capacity for nuclear, and then come down here and speak positively about it. That's an impressive hat trick. Customers could have paid so much less, but that wouldn't have been as profitable for you. So here we sit. If my hands are shaking and my voice is shaking today, it's not because I'm nervous. It's because I'm so angry at the situation that we're here today discussing. The stipulated agreement forces Georgia Power customers to pay 10 times more for installed capacity, but we are to believe that somehow this saves money. Because Georgia Power doesn't get all of the cost overruns? That's nonsense. Georgia Power succeeds in averting an embarrassing and shocking public review of their incompetence in constructing and managing Plant Vogtle with this stipulated agreement. Yesterday, Mr. Abramovich said that Georgia Power's expenditures for Plant Vogtle were all reasonable and prudent, and Georgia Power consultants said so as well. But it's not true, is it? Construction failures from the very beginning were, well, besides the prostitution rings and on-site drug use, which is documented, I'm not making that up. In 2012, the first rebar was installed incorrectly and had to be redone. In 2013, the first concrete pour resulted in a stop work order and Nuclear Regulatory Commission findings of significant breakdown in quality assurance. The modular parts didn't work and had to be set up on factories on site and reworked. Vogtle never achieved an integrated project schedule and averaged 1 day of delay for every day of construction. I'm sure that's why the IBEW gentlemen loved this work. They made a ton of money for many, many years beyond when they should have. This rework is why the project is 7 years late. Now we talk about Westinghouse bankruptcy and COVID. COVID expenses were $250 million. Do you know how much that is of $35 billion? Not even 1%. COVID had nothing to do with why this project is so far over budget. And neither did the Westinghouse bankruptcy, because what happened after they went bankrupt? Well, the cost overruns accelerated. The delays accelerated. In 2021, while using pressurized air to check for leaks in welds, the IBEW craft workmen overpressurized and ruined the steel floor in the spent fuel pool and had to replace the whole fuel pool. 600 cables were installed incorrectly and had to be rewired. Independent monitors have documented extensive site and executive management failures. Georgia Power filed materially inaccurate schedules and budgets for at least 10 years of the project. What's another word for material inaccurate? It's lying. Georgia Power's approach to project planning was to develop an unachievable plan, fail relatively quickly, and repeat the process to develop a new and still unachievable plan. And those aren't my words. That's independent construction monitor Don Grace's words, or maybe it was Steve Rucker's words. The documentation on file is so extensive it's head spinning and nauseating on the corruption and incompetencies of this project. VCM 22, Don Grace documented a component failure rate of 80%. Is that prudent and reasonable? Supporters of this agreement claim wins for 2 program expansions that assist Georgia Power customers with utility bill affordability. Nothing that we heard anything from our student supporters or the nuclear energy industry speaker. Programs assisting customers with bill affordability should not be a card played by Georgia Power under any circumstances, never mind one that allows them to post $17 billion in profits while avoiding prudency review for billions of dollars in cost overruns. The income qualified senior discount program is not even paid by Georgia Power. It's paid by us, customers. Why are they calling the shots on that program? That's your job. Georgia Power is one of the richest utilities in the nation. Their return on equity is far higher than industry norms. They should not be allowed to decide how many senior Georgians living 200% below the federal poverty line may be on the program. All seniors 200% below the poverty line should be in this program, not whatever number Georgia Power deems acceptable. That's shameful. I don't like to think of any senior that poor having their lights disconnected, and none of you should either. Same with the demand side management program. Win. That's some of the intervenors who signed, supported, and is happy about. Demand side management programs save customers significant money. That is another card the utility should not be playing in this billion-dollar poker game. This commission should require any program that saves customers money to be implemented with zero input from the monopoly utility, earning a guaranteed rate of return on captive customers who have no choice in who their utility is. Ensuring customers have the lowest possible bills while Georgia Power retains financial integrity is literally the job of this commission. But where is that balance? Georgia's electricity bills rank in the top 10 highest in the country, while Georgia Power profits range between 14% and 20% every year. That's insanity. There's no balance here. During the troubled Vogtle construction years, Georgia Power enjoyed increasingly high profitability, totaling nearly $17 billion between 2009 and 2022 when this project was constructed. In fact, the more the project was delayed and over budget, the more profits Georgia Power received. Georgia Power should be required to use their huge profits to pay for Vogtle cost overruns instead of allowing Georgia Power to pass these billions of dollars on to its captive customers. It's disappointing to me that intervenors even participate in this process because it gives Georgia Power cover to say, if these nonprofits agree, then it must be good for customers, which is exactly what they said yesterday. But good intentions and good missions from these nonprofits do not always produce good results, and in this case it didn't. This commission has not conducted a single customer impact study on what adding $11.1 billion will do to vulnerable families struggling to pay Georgia utility bills. Yet understanding rate impacts is literally the job of a state regulatory commission. There is no more important role. Otherwise, this commission cannot responsibly meet state law to set just and reasonable rates. Yet this rate proceeding for Plant Vogtle, the largest in state history and far from normal, has had no customer impact study ordered or even discussed. Why do you think Georgia Power, in a rare rebuttal to intervenor testimony, chose this part of my filing to dispute? Is it because they don't want to know and don't want you to know how much Jordan's already high energy burden is going to grow? That adding $11 billion to rates would do? We know from 2022's disconnection report that 240,000 Georgia households are disconnected. And when I say disconnected, I don't mean they sit in the dark with candles. They lose their food, their freezer rots, they lose their cell phones, their laptops. If they're parents, they might lose custody of their children because DFACS will not allow parents to keep their children in a home without electricity. It leads to destabilization of families. And you know what? Those people aren't here today because they're working. How many more households will be pushed into instability when next summer rates go up? We don't know, and thus vulnerable families will not receive assistance that this commission could be giving them. This commission rarely, if ever, speaks about the pain expressed by public witnesses or impacts of rate increases or disconnection on customers. Sadly, the opposite is even true. When a public witness recently asked how the commission thought the residents of Burke County would be able to afford electricity rate increases from Vogtle, Commissioner McDonald asserted that the power produced by Units 3 will be among the cheapest and cleanest in the state, and compared Vogtle to buying a new car with better mileage. You're going to be saving on fuel costs, but you still have to pay for the car, he said. That makes no sense. Such statements from Commissioner McDonald indicates he doesn't understand the difference between fixed and variable costs. Whatever small amount of fuel savings there is, if any, will not be lower than the enormous rate increases customers are required to pay for constructing Plant Vogtle. There's no evidence that asserts any savings to customers. Note that Georgia Power doesn't make such statements. Georgia Power's PR machine would love to be trumpeting cost savings throughout the state, but they are silent because it's not true. Stop saying it. We know from tariff filings that Units 3 and 4 will increase residential rates 26% for the lifespan of these reactors. The last I checked, a 26% increase is not saving money. I'm not saying the bill will go up 26% because the NCCR tariff will stop, but certainly the bill will go up a lot. Most corporations list their value proposition as having high quality equipment, great customer service, a better product than someone else. Georgia Power's parent, Southern Company, in their Q3 presentation to Wall Street, you know what they list their value proposition is? You. That's right, commissioners. You are listed as premier state-regulated utilities supporting shareholder dividends as their value proposition. That's outrageous, and is yet another indication that this commission is not protecting the public from monopoly pricing and power.
Mr. Durand, let me interrupt you just a second, because the commission rules on a summary of testimony is 15 minutes, but I'm trying to work with you on that. I just wanted to know if you know, can you finish your summary?
Yes. Yeah, so, in less than 5.
Go ahead.
4. Commissioners, you celebrate that you have a constructive regulatory relationship with Georgia Power, but that is not your job. Your job is to be a check on monopoly power and take the place of the free market that is missing. There could be no clearer definition of regulatory capture than seeing a for-profit corporation like Georgia Power, parent Southern Company, list commissioners as their value proposition. And we see the result. Georgia Power bills are consistently ranked 5th or 6th highest in the nation. Adding $11 billion to the rates will push Georgia Power bills to the highest in the nation. So no, commissioners, the people of Georgia won't be thanking you for Plant Vogtle in 5 years or any other time frame. Customers who are disconnected for sure won't be thanking you. There's no competitive business market in which a for-profit corporation could deliver a project that is $18 billion over budget and 7 years late. It just would not happen. The free market would attain balance through bankruptcy, lawsuits, and jail. So in that regard, it would be better to have no commission than to have one that provides state-sanctioned ratepayer robbery. I remind commissioners that this commission added no cost cap or consumer protections to this project, despite Vogtle Units 1 and 2 going far over budget, and despite staff's strong recommendations to do so. And you continued this project despite strong opposition. I'd like to close with the following recommendations: that this commission reject this stipulated agreement and conduct the thorough prudency hearings that you committed to repeatedly and that Georgia Power customers deserve. That this commission expand the qualified low-income senior program to all seniors living 200% below or more the poverty line without regard to Georgia Power's desires and wishes. That's your job. That commissioners expand the demand-side management program to help customers save money. That's your job. That commissioners figure out how to create a reasonable balance between setting just and reasonable rates and utilities' financial viability because right now there is no such balance. It's all for Georgia Power. That Georgia Power utilized its own massive profits over the past 14 years to pay for its construction mistakes, cost overruns, and delays on Vogtle 4. That you order a customer impact study to gain an understanding of how the largest rate increase in state history impacts customers, and then act on those findings by creating assistance programs for the expansion of the extremely high levels of energy poverty the state already has. Right now, 70% of people disconnected are people of color. There's no provision for energy burden, energy poverty, or bill pay assistance for those communities. Never mind the addition to those communities this rate increase will have. That you clarify for the media and for ratepayers that rates are increasing 26% to pay for Plant Vogtle, or that you provide transparency in what the total bill increases will be, which is much more than the $9 a month that some media outlets have incorrectly calculated, because you do not provide official calculations. So reporters struggle to understand rate impacts. That is information you should be providing, and that most commissions routinely do. And that you stop allowing the crazy level of redactions and trade secrets on filings Georgia Power makes. Georgia Power customers are paying. Customers have no choice in who their provider is. Georgia Power does not have intellectual property they need to protect. Electricity is a commodity. Georgia Power customers have a right to know what they're required to pay for. And these facts are hidden because Georgia Power doesn't want anyone to know things like a 47% rate-based expansion with a 7% increase in capacity. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Durand.
Chairman, Mr. Durand is now available for questions from the commission, many of the intervenors and Georgia Power.
Thank you, Mr. Brinovitz. Commissioners, any questions? All right, we'll move on down the list of parties for the chance to cross the panel, starting with the Public Service Commission.
No question.
No questions. Georgia Power Company.
No questions.